You first?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, I'll listen to you.
Well, I was going to ask if you could pray for me, ma'am. Right now.
I'll definitely be praying for you, son.
It was just past midnight on a quiet Sunday in Middleburg, Florida, when 14-year-old Kyrie Beeman's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID showed his best friend's name, Trevor Lee. Nothing unusual about that, except for the time and what Trevor was about to say. He told me that he loved me, and he told me that he was just calling to tell me goodnight. Kyrie would later recall, his voice heavy with disbelief. What seemed like an innocent late-night conversation between teenage friends would soon reveal itself as something far more devastating. This wasn't just any ordinary midnight call. It was a goodbye. Within hours, Trevor Lee would be sitting in a church parking lot, confessing to police that he had just committed the unthinkable. The same hands that had caught footballs alongside Kyrie just days earlier had pulled the trigger on his own parents. The same voice that whispered, "I love you," to his best friend had moments before, or perhaps after, dialed 911 to report a double homicide. Tonight, we uncover the shocking truth behind that final phone call and the bloody events that shattered a community's faith in the families they thought they knew. Middleburg, Florida sits quietly in Clay County, where Spanish moss drapes ancient oak trees and suburban neighborhoods promise the American dream. It's the kind of place where Friday night football games bring entire communities together, where neighbors know each other's names, and where families like the Lees seem to have it all figured out. David Lee, 44 years old, was more than just a father. He was a mentor to his son's friends. Brandy Smith, 45, had created a warm home where Trevor's teammates felt welcomed and loved. Their house on Silver Point near County Road 220 had become a second home to many young athletes, including Kyrie Beeman. They were probably the best, or one of the best families I knew. Kyrie remembered. They were funny, and they treated me very well. They told me all the time that they loved me like a son, and they treated me as such. The Lee household was where laughter echoed through hallways, where post-practice meals were shared, and where teenage dreams were nurtured. Trevor Lee was a typical 14-year-old, a football player, with close friendships that stretched back to elementary school. His bond with Kyrie was particularly strong, built on years of shared experiences and mutual trust. Before we continue with this heart-wrenching story, I want you to think about something. Have you ever received a late-night phone call that changed everything? Maybe it was news of an accident, a breakup, or just a friend reaching out during their darkest moment. Those midnight conversations often carry weight that daylight calls never do. Drop a comment below and tell me about a late-night call that stuck with you. Was it good news, bad news, or something that left you questioning everything you thought you knew about someone close to you? Your stories matter, and they help us understand how these moments shape our lives. Now, here's what I need you to do. If you're ready to hear how a simple goodnight phone call became the prelude to one of the most shocking family murders in Florida's recent history, hit that like button right now. This story is going to take you through twists that will leave you questioning how well we really know the people closest to us. Because what happened next in the Lee household wasn't just a family argument gone wrong. It was a complete destruction of everything that seemed perfect from the outside. Stay with me, because the truth is more disturbing than you could ever imagine. David Lee and Brandy Smith had built what appeared to be the ideal blended family in their Middleburg home. David, a devoted father who never missed his son's football practices, had found love again with Brandy, who embraced Trevor as her own child. Their relationship wasn't just about romance. It was about creating a stable, loving environment where a teenage boy could thrive. The couple's commitment to Trevor went beyond basic parenting duties. David would drive Trevor and his teammates to and from practice, often staying to watch scrimmages and offer encouragement. Brandy made sure their home was always stocked with snacks for hungry teenagers, turning their kitchen into an unofficial team hangout spot. Friends and neighbors consistently described them as generous, caring people who put family first. In their community, the Lee Smith household represented everything parents aspired to achieve. They attended school events, supported local activities, and opened their doors to Trevor's friends without hesitation. David's work ethic and Brandy's nurturing nature created a partnership that seemed unbreakable. Their social media presence showed family vacations, birthday celebrations, and proud moments at Trevor's football games. To outsiders, they had mastered the delicate balance of discipline and freedom that every parent struggles with. Trevor appeared well-adjusted, academically successful, and socially connected. The family's reputation in Middleburg was spotless. They were the neighbors everyone wanted, the parents other kids wished they had, and the couple that made blended families look effortless. Kyrie Beeman had a front-row seat to the Lee family dynamics, and what he witnessed was nothing short of extraordinary. As Trevor's closest friend since elementary school, Kyrie spent countless hours in their home, sharing meals, studying, and experiencing the warmth that David and Brandy created for everyone who walked through their door. They told me all the time that they loved me like a son, and they treated me as such, Kyrie recalled, his voice filled with genuine affection for the couple who had become his second family. This wasn't just polite hospitality. It was authentic care that extended far beyond their own child. Brandy would pack extra lunches when she knew Kyrie was coming over, and David treated him with the same respect and guidance he showed Trevor. The friendship between the two boys was strengthened by the family environment David and Brandy had cultivated. They encouraged healthy relationships, supported their sons' friendships, and created space for teenage boys to be themselves without judgment. Kyrie witnessed family dinners filled with laughter, homework sessions where both parents offered help, and quiet moments that revealed the genuine love this family shared. From Kyrie's perspective, Trevor had won the parent lottery. The stability, love, and support he observed made the events that followed seem impossible to comprehend. Looking back through the lens of tragedy, experts now recognize that even the most loving families can harbor hidden tensions that remain invisible to outsiders. While David and Brandy appeared to provide everything a teenager could need, the pressures of adolescence, blended family dynamics, and unspoken expectations can create internal conflicts that never surface publicly. Mental health professionals point out that 14-year-olds often struggle with identity formation, emotional regulation, and communication skills. Sometimes the very families that seem most perfect can inadvertently create pressure for children to maintain an impossible standard. The argument that preceded the shooting suggests underlying issues that neither friends nor community members detected. What makes this case particularly troubling is how completely the warning signs were hidden from everyone who knew them best.
New details about a Clay County teen accused of killing their parents in their Middleburg home. And tonight, the 14-year-old's best friend is speaking with News 4 Jax. Family member also shared this photo of David Lee and Brandy Smith with us.
Their 14-year-old son, Trevor Lee, is now charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder. Their home sits near Silver Point and County Road 220. News 4 Jax reporter Alicia Hatcher went to the neighborhood where it happened and spoke with the teen's friend.
One of Trevor's closest friends, Kyrie Beeman, met us right outside of the Lee family home. He says he's known Trevor since elementary school and he just saw him Friday. He also says he spoke with him over the phone around 12:30 this morning, and the conversation they had, he'll never forget.
He told me that he loved me, and he told me that he was just calling to tell me goodnight.
The best friend of a teen now accused of murder replays the last conversation they had before learning the shocking news. Crime scene tape lined a Middleburg neighborhood Monday morning after a chilling 911 call from a 14-year-old boy.
Our 911 communications center received a call from a young man who stated he had just killed his parents. He stated that deputies could find his parents at the house and that he had walked just over a mile away to a church.
Deputies responded and arrested 14-year-old Trevor Lee. When deputies got to the home, they found David Lee and Brandy Smith shot and killed inside.
Preliminary investigation, and we're still very early in this investigation, it appears that there was some sort of domestic argument last night between Trevor Lee and his parents, and that this shooting culminated from that argument.
When we arrived on scene, a family member was there but declined to speak. But one person did open up, someone who didn't just know the family, he considered them his own.
They were probably the best or one of the best families I knew. They were funny and they treated me very well. They told me all the time that they loved me like a son and they treated me as such.
Kyrie says it's still hard to believe, but he hopes people remember Trevor for more than just what happened.
He's not a bad person just because he made one bad decision. He's done so much for everyone I know, and I don't want him just to be known as a killer or a murderer, and that he was a great kid, a great son.
Coming up on News4JAX at 6, we'll share the moment Kyrie says he will always cherish that he shared with the Lee family. For now reporting, Alicia Hatcher, Channel 4, the local station.
Friday afternoon in Middleburg carried the familiar rhythm of high school football season. Trevor Lee laced up his cleats, grabbed his helmet, and prepared for another practice session with his teammates. The autumn air was crisp, perfect for running drills and perfecting plays that would hopefully lead to victory in their next game. After practice ended, Trevor didn't have to worry about finding a ride home. David Lee was there, as he always was, waiting in the parking lot with the engine running. Kyrie Beeman climbed into the back seat alongside Trevor, grateful for the reliable transportation that David provided without question or complaint. The drive home was filled with typical post-practice conversation, discussions about plays, upcoming games, and the casual banter between a father and his son's best friend. David dropped Kyrie off at his house before continuing home with Trevor. It was a routine they had repeated dozens of times throughout the football season. Father and son sharing those precious moments in the car, talking about the day's events, making plans for the weekend ahead. Neither of them could have known that this would be their final car ride together. For David Lee, it was just another Friday evening of being the dad he had always strived to be. For Trevor, it was the last normal moment of his childhood. Sunday night arrived with no indication that the Lee household was about to become a crime scene. David and Brandy were likely settling into their evening routine, perhaps watching television or preparing for the upcoming work week. Trevor was probably finishing homework or texting friends, including his late-night conversation with Kyrie that would later haunt his best friend forever. According to Sheriff Michelle Cook's investigation, an argument erupted between Trevor and his parents sometime that evening. The exact details of what sparked the confrontation remain part of the ongoing investigation, but what started as a typical family disagreement quickly escalated beyond anyone's control. These weren't strangers fighting in the street. This was a son clashing with the two people who had loved and supported him throughout his 14 years of life. The argument intensified in ways that no one could have predicted. Whatever words were exchanged, whatever boundaries were crossed, the situation reached a breaking point that would destroy 3 lives forever.
But first, back to that breaking news in Clay County.
Yeah, the Clay County Sheriff's Office says 2 people are dead. This is a shooting investigation. This is off of Silver Point, right off of County Road 220, close to the Middleburg area. Police are setting up right now to give us more information. Right now, we do have our Logan McDonald. Let's listen in.
Just after midnight this morning, our 911 communications center received a call from a young man who stated he had just killed his parents. He stated that deputies could find his parents at the house and that he had walked just over a mile away to a church and he would await for deputies to arrive to take him into custody. Deputies responded immediately to both locations, the church and then to a home on out here in the Middleburg area. When deputies arrived to the church, they took 14-year-old Trevor Lee into custody. When almost simultaneously deputies arrived to the address in question, they found 2 deceased individuals inside, David Lee, 44 years of age, and Brandy Smith, 45 years of age. Both of the deceased appeared to have gunshot wounds. Based upon our preliminary investigation, and we're still very early in this investigation, it appears that there was some sort of domestic argument last night between Trevor Lee and his parents, and that this shooting culminated from that argument. This does appear to be an isolated incident, and we have no further threat to our community at this time. Again, this is a very active scene. Our detectives are working diligently to try to figure all of this out. We do want to extend our deepest sympathies to the family, the friends, and all of those who are affected by this heartbreaking incident, and we would like to ask anybody in the community that may have some information regarding Trevor Lee or his parents to please reach out to us at 904-264-6512. And with that, I will take any questions.
Did the teen have any prior mental health history, anything like, visiting the guidance office at school, or any therapy, any Baker Acts?
That we're looking into that. That's going to be part of the investigation. You think about this just happened at midnight last night, just after midnight, and we're here early Monday morning. So all of that is going to be looked at. His history at school, any previous contacts, we don't know right now, but that'll be part of the investigative process.
Just going by names alone, biological dad, do we have a relation with the woman?
I believe these are both his biological parents at this time. I know the father is for sure.
With different names, I was curious.
Correct.
Was it the parents' gun or was it the kid's gun?
At this time, we believe it's going to be the parents' gun, but we're still, again, looking into that through, talking to him, finding out where the gun was, how he got a hold of the gun, how did he know the gun was there. The gun was recovered at the scene. He left the gun at the scene when he walked to the church to call 911.
Were they both shot just one?
Tragic news there in Middleburg, where a son killed his parents. David Lee and Brandy Smith, they had gunshot wounds after that domestic argument, the sheriff was saying last night. He was a 14-year-old boy, Trevor Lee. He called authorities, walked to a church, and then the police took him into custody. Just tragic this morning.
Yeah, definitely a heartbreaking situation there. We heard Logan asking questions, and as she said, this is still early on, very active investigation. We've been at that scene for several hours now. They're still asking for any additional information and tips.
David and Brandy, who had spent years nurturing their son and creating a loving home, found themselves facing a version of Trevor they had never encountered before. In homes across America, parents and teenagers argue every single day. Voices are raised, doors are slammed, and harsh words are spoken that everyone usually regrets by morning. But in the Lee household that Sunday night, there would be no opportunity for apologies, no chance to make things right, and no morning reconciliation that typically follows family conflicts. Somewhere in the heat of that Sunday night argument, 14-year-old Trevor Lee made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The transition from angry words to deadly violence happened in moments that can never be taken back, never be undone, never be explained in any way that makes sense to rational minds. The gunshots that rang out in the Silver Point home shattered more than just a quiet suburban evening. They destroyed a family, devastated a community, and left a teenage boy facing the horrific reality of what his hands had done. David Lee and Brandy Smith, the parents who had driven him to football practice just days earlier, lay dead from apparent gunshot wounds. In that instant, Trevor Lee ceased to be a typical teenager with a bright future ahead of him. He became something else entirely, a 14-year-old killer who had murdered the two people who loved him most. The boy who had whispered, "I love you," to his best friend just hours later would have to live with the knowledge that he had taken everything away from everyone, including himself. The silence that followed the gunshots in the Lee household was deafening. David Lee, 44 years old, and Brandy Smith, 45, lay motionless in their own home, the same home where they had welcomed Trevor's friends, celebrated birthdays, and built what everyone believed was an unbreakable family bond. The violence that had erupted was so sudden, so complete, that there was no opportunity for last words, no chance for forgiveness, no final moments of connection between parents and child. Trevor Lee stood in the aftermath of his actions, surrounded by the destruction he had caused. The teenager who had been laughing with teammates just days earlier now faced the incomprehensible reality of what he had done. Blood stained the floors where his parents had fallen, creating a crime scene that would forever change how investigators and the community viewed family violence. The house that had once been filled with the sounds of teenage laughter and family conversations was now a tomb of silence. Every room held memories of better times. The kitchen where Brandy had prepared countless meals. The living room where David had watched football games with Trevor. The hallways where family photos still hung on the walls, now witnesses to an unthinkable tragedy. In those moments after the shooting, Trevor Lee had to confront the magnitude of his actions. The parents who had driven him to practice, who had opened their home to his friends, who had told Kyrie they loved him like a son, were gone forever. There would be no taking it back, no explaining it away, no returning to the life they had all shared just hours before. What transforms a 14-year-old boy from a loving son into a killer remains one of the most disturbing questions in criminal psychology. Experts who study juvenile violence point to a complex combination of factors that can create the perfect storm for such devastating actions. Adolescent brains are still developing, particularly in areas responsible for impulse control and emotional regulation. The teenage years bring intense psychological pressure as young people struggle with identity formation, peer relationships, and the overwhelming emotions that come with puberty. When these natural developmental challenges collide with family stress, academic pressure, or undiagnosed mental health issues, the results can be catastrophic. Some teenagers experience what psychologists call a psychological break, a moment when rational thinking completely shuts down. In Trevor's case, whatever triggered that Sunday night argument may have activated a fight-or-flight response that his developing brain couldn't properly process. The same hormones that help teenagers excel in sports or academics can also fuel explosive anger when combined with stress and poor coping mechanisms. Mental health professionals emphasize that most teenagers experiencing psychological distress never resort to violence, making cases like Trevor's particularly complex to understand. The tragedy lies not just in the loss of David and Brandy's lives, but in the complete destruction of a young person's future, a future that seemed so promising just days before. I need to pause here and ask you something crucial. As parents, friends, or family members, how well do we really know the people we love? Trevor's best friend Kyrie had no idea what was building inside his closest companion. David and Brandy, who seemed to be model parents, missed whatever warning signs might have existed. Think about the teenagers in your life right now. Are there conversations you should be having? Are there signs of stress, anger, or emotional struggles that you might be overlooking? Drop a comment and share your thoughts. Have you ever been completely shocked by someone's actions? How do we better support the young people around us? If this story is making you think differently about family dynamics and mental health awareness, smash that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We're about to explore how Trevor's night of terror led him to seek sanctuary in the most unexpected place, and what happened when he finally faced the consequences of his actions. In the early hours of Monday morning, while most of Middleburg slept peacefully in their beds, 14-year-old Trevor Lee sat alone in a church parking lot with his cell phone in his trembling hands. The same hands that had just committed an unthinkable act now dialed 911, preparing to confess to the most devastating crime imaginable. The church he had chosen for his confession wasn't random. It represented everything his actions had destroyed. Churches symbolize forgiveness, redemption, and sanctuary for those seeking peace. For Trevor, this sacred ground became the place where he would finally face the reality of what he had done to his family. When the 911 operator answered, Trevor's voice carried the weight of his horrific secret. "I killed my parents," he told the dispatcher, words that would forever change multiple lives and shatter a community's sense of safety. The confession was simple, direct, and devastating in its honesty. There were no excuses, no attempts to minimize his actions, just the raw truth spoken from a church parking lot in the darkness. The dispatcher, trained to handle emergency calls, had likely never received a confession quite like this one. A child calling to report that he had murdered his own parents. It defied every assumption about family relationships and teenage behavior. As Trevor waited for law enforcement to arrive, he sat in the shadow of a building dedicated to forgiveness, knowing that some actions can never be forgiven or forgotten. Sheriff Michelle Cook's deputies received the call and immediately dispatched units to both locations, the church where Trevor waited and the Silver Point home where he claimed the bodies would be found. The drive to County Road 220 felt longer than usual for the responding officers, who hoped against hope that this was somehow a false alarm or a teenager's cry for help rather than an actual double homicide. When deputies arrived at the Lee residence, they found the front door unlocked. Inside the home that had once been filled with laughter and love, they discovered the lifeless bodies of David Lee and Brandy Smith. Both victims had suffered apparent gunshot wounds, confirming Trevor's confession in the most heartbreaking way possible. The crime scene told a story of sudden violence in a place where violence should never exist. Family photos still smiled down from the walls, unaware that the subjects of those happy memories were now gone forever. The deputies who processed the scene would later describe it as one of the most difficult cases of their careers, not because of the brutality, but because of the complete destruction of what had appeared to be a loving family. The evidence was clear, the confession was recorded, and the victims were beyond help. All that remained was to arrest the 14-year-old boy who had destroyed everything. At the church parking lot, deputies found Trevor Lee exactly where he said he would be, sitting quietly, waiting for the consequences of his actions to arrive. There was no dramatic chase, no resistance, no final act of defiance. The teenager who had committed such a violent crime surrendered peacefully, as if the weight of his actions had drained all fight from his body. The arrest was surreal in its calmness. Trevor offered no excuses, made no demands, and showed no signs of the rage that had consumed him hours earlier. He simply allowed the handcuffs to be placed on his wrists, accepting his fate with the resignation of someone who knew there was no escape from what he had done. As the patrol car pulled away from the church, Trevor Lee's childhood officially ended. The boy who had played football, laughed with friends, and been loved like a son by his best friend's family, was now facing 2 counts of second-degree murder. The sanctuary he had chosen for his confession became the last place he would experience freedom. When Kyrie Beeman first heard the news that his best friend had been arrested for murdering his parents, his immediate reaction was complete disbelief. "I didn't believe it when I first heard," he would later tell reporters, his voice heavy with the kind of pain that comes from having your entire understanding of someone shattered in an instant. The Trevor that Kyrie had known since elementary school was incapable of such violence. This was the same boy who had shared countless sleepovers, football practices, and family dinners. The same friend who had called him just after midnight to say, "I love you," and wish him good night. How could those same hands that had caught passes and shared high fives have pulled a trigger on the people who loved him most? Kyrie found himself trapped between loyalty and horror, between the memories of years of friendship and the undeniable reality of what Trevor had done. Trevor isn't a bad person. He made some bad decisions, and he will suffer the consequences, but that's not all he was, Kyrie explained, desperately trying to hold onto the friend he thought he knew. The psychological burden on Kyrie was immense. Not only had he lost his second family in David and Brandy, but he had also lost his best friend to an act so violent and senseless that it defied comprehension. The midnight phone call that had seemed like a simple good night now carried sinister undertones that would haunt Kyrie forever. Had Trevor called him before or after committing the murders? Was that final, "I love you," actually a goodbye from someone who knew his life was about to end? The news of the Lee family murders sent shockwaves through Middleburg's tight-knit community. Neighbors who had waved to David and Brandy just days earlier struggled to process the reality that such violence had occurred in their peaceful suburban neighborhood. Parents who had trusted the Lee household with their own children questioned everything they thought they knew about family safety. Local schools brought in counselors to help students cope with the tragedy, particularly Trevor's teammates who had shared the field with him just days before the murders. Teachers who had watched Trevor grow up from elementary school through his freshman year found themselves searching their memories for warning signs they might have missed. The football community was especially devastated. Coaches who had mentored both Trevor and Kyrie struggled to explain to their young players how someone they had trusted and supported could commit such an unthinkable act. Friday night games would never feel the same, knowing that the sport they all loved had been the backdrop to Trevor's final normal moments with his father. Kyrie's most haunting statement revealed the psychological complexity of trying to reconcile 2 versions of the same person. The Trevor that did this, I don't know that Trevor, and the Trevor that I knew, and all of our friends knew, I will continue to be friends with him, and I pray that the Trevor that did this died last night. This powerful declaration captured the impossible situation facing everyone who had loved Trevor Lee. How do you maintain loyalty to someone who has committed an unforgivable act? Kyrie's solution was to separate his friend into two distinct identities: the Trevor he had grown up with and the stranger who had murdered his parents in cold blood. Mental health experts emphasize that while cases like Trevor Lee's are extremely rare, there are warning signs that parents and caregivers should never ignore. Sudden changes in behavior, withdrawal from family activities, or expressions of hopelessness can indicate a teenager is struggling with overwhelming emotions. Dr. Sarah Martinez, adolescent psychologist, explains that most violent outbursts don't happen without some preceding indicators. Parents should pay attention to dramatic shifts in sleep patterns, academic performance, or social relationships. When teenagers begin isolating themselves from friends they've known for years, or when they start expressing anger toward family members in ways that seem disproportionate to normal teenage rebellion, professional intervention may be necessary. The key is distinguishing between typical adolescent mood swings and genuine psychological distress. Communication remains the most powerful tool for prevention. Regular check-ins with teenagers about their emotional state, school pressures, and peer relationships can reveal underlying issues before they escalate. Parents should create safe spaces for honest conversations without judgment or immediate consequences. When teenagers feel heard and supported, they're more likely to seek help rather than resort to violence. Most importantly, parents should never hesitate to seek professional help when they notice concerning changes in their child's behavior. Early intervention through counseling, therapy, or psychiatric evaluation can prevent tragedies and save lives. If you're concerned about a teenager in your life showing signs of emotional distress or violent tendencies, take action immediately. Contact school counselors, mental health professionals, or local crisis intervention services. Many communities offer 24-hour hotlines specifically designed to help families navigate mental health emergencies. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. If a young person in your life is making concerning statements about harming themselves or others, don't assume they're just seeking attention. Remove access to weapons, including firearms, knives, or any objects that could be used to cause harm. Create a safety plan that includes emergency contacts and professional resources. For friends like Kyrie, who might receive troubling late-night calls or concerning messages, don't keep dangerous secrets. Alert trusted adults immediately when someone confides thoughts of violence. Remember that getting help for a friend isn't betrayal. It's potentially life-saving intervention that could prevent another family from experiencing the devastation that struck the Lee household. The tragedy that destroyed the Lee family serves as a heartbreaking reminder that mental health awareness and family communication can literally save lives. If this story has opened your eyes to warning signs you might have missed, please share it with other parents, teachers, and community members who need to hear this message. Hit that like button if you believe we need more conversations about preventing family violence, and subscribe for more true crime stories that don't just entertain. They educate and potentially save lives. Let's honor David Lee and Brandy Smith's memory by protecting other families from experiencing this unimaginable loss.